You ever heard the term stay in your lane or stay in my lane? Well, it is a term that a lot of us have used over the last couple years, especially since we hear such a younger generation always talk about it. You need to just stay in your lane. You need to just mind your own business. That's what they're saying. But they kind of spruce it up and they say you just need to stay in your lane, or I'm just going to stay in my lane. Isn't it funny though how busy we can be in this life of ours between our personal investments, our professional investments, that we still find a way to get out of our lane and get into somebody else's. That's amazing to me. But yet we try, in this culture that we're in, we try our best to insist that we or someone else stays in your lane. Well, this morning's midweek manna is all about that. It's stay in your lane unless God tells you to get out of it. How about that? This particular topic has led me to think about John chapter 21, in the latter part of John chapter 21, when Jesus has already resurrected from the dead, and he's got the disciples all around him, and he's telling them, he's giving them their marching orders, so to speak. He's talking to them about the Great Commission, as you've seen at the end of the chapter of Matthew chapter 28, and then John is no different. He's giving the disciples their marching orders and preparing them on what's to come. And he throws out a couple of challenges to Peter. And one of those challenges was to feed my sheep, feed the disciples, feed my people. How much do you love me? And Peter goes through this series and he's like, Lord, you know how much I love you. And he tells Peter, feed my sheep. So later on, as they are still with the disciples, as Jesus is still with the disciples, Peter decides, and we all know that Peter has made some decisions in his career with Jesus, and here is another moment where Peter decides to ask a question, and it's in verse 20. Peter turns around, seeing the disciples whom Jesus loved following him. We believe that to be John, and who leans on Jesus's breast at supper. And we believe that again to be John, who just loved the Lord, and he just leans on his side and he says, this is Peter, Lord, um, what is this man what's his job? What's he gonna do? Peter had got out of his lane. Peter wanted to know what was going to happen to John. Jesus, you don't ask me all these questions. You ask me about feed my sheep and how much do you love me. I want to know what you're going to ask about him, Jesus. And Peter decides to get out of his lane, and Jesus says, if I will be here, if I will give him any other assignments, or if I decide to stay around until whatever it is I choose to do, if I leave here and I come back and John is still here, what does that have to do with you? Why is it any of your business? And what Jesus is telling us, we have to stay in our lane that he assigns us. He gives us the opportunities to stay in our lane, but he also makes the shifts out of our lane into another lane. But it's not so that we can be in the business of someone else. It's not so that we can hinder someone else. It's not so that we can find out all of the things that's happening in their lives. It's so that we can take him into that lane, and that we can be an ambassador for him when we get out of our lane into another lane that is strictly and uniquely ordained by him. You see, staying in our lane, while it sounds good, it may not always be for our good. It could be for someone else's good. So when we use that terminology today, let's just make sure, or going forward, let's just make sure that we use it very loosely. I don't want to know all of your business. In fact, I'm not always interested in all of your business. I'm interested in the Lord's business and what he can do through me to maybe help you, or maybe what you can do to help me. And I think that's how we need to look at it. Because remember, Jesus did so much that was counteractive to the culture that it just seemed a little strange. But wouldn't it be even different and unique for us to use the terminology of today's culture to do Jesus's work? Stay in your lane unless he tells you to make a shift. That's today's midweek manna. Take care and God bless. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share if you choose. This week's midweek, man, I can't even talk. I gotta stay in my lane. uh, have a great day, guys. Be blessed.